What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Guys That Magic. I'm going to be your host, Dave. Joining me today, we got Hunter. Hunter, say what's up.
What's up, everybody?
And Hunter, for the purposes of this episode, he took $100. He threw it at the new Hail Caesar deck, one of the new Precons coming out from Fallout. And we upgraded this thing. Isn't that right?
That is correct. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, so before we go ahead and dive in with that, just a little bit of a friendly reminder. We are Guys at Magic. We love all of your feedback, your support, all that other kind of fun jazz. If you have not done so already, please make sure that you like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. We push out new content all the time. We do these upgrades for all of the pre-constructed decks, whether it be for Fallout, whether it be for one of their other, Universes Beyond products. I forgot what's coming down the pipeline. They seem to have so much. Or some of the other actual Magic-related IPs. So before we dive in with that, though, Hunter, go ahead and help me out. Hail Caesar is, what kind of deck is this, and what commander do we have?
Yeah, so Hail Caesar is actually helmed by Caesar himself. Who would have thought, right? Caesar, Legion's Emperor, is a red, a white, and a black for a 4/4 legendary creature human soldier. It says, whenever you attack, you may sacrifice another creature, and when you do, you choose 2. You can either create 2 1/1 red and white soldier creature tokens with haste that are tapped and attacking, or you can draw a card and lose 1 life, or you could have Caesar, Legion's Empire, deal damage equal to the number of creature tokens you control to target opponent. So, you might guess we are a Mardu creature token deck. So we're trying to sack some creatures to make our commander really hum, and we're going to be destroying going wide.
All right, I am definitely here for this. Seems very aggressive. I like the aristocracy vibes that this commander is giving off. Plus, who doesn't like beating face?
Exactly that. I also did want to talk about the backup commander. It is Mr. House, President, and CEO. It is just a red, a white, a black for a 0/4 legendary artifact creature human. It says whenever you roll a 4 or higher, create a 3/3 colorless robot artifact creature token. If you rolled a 6 or higher, instead create that token and a treasure token. Has another ability to pay 4, tap it, roll a 6-sided die, plus an additional 6-sided die for each mana from treasures spent to activate this ability. The reason I want to talk about this card is because on the internet, it is probably the most popular built-around commander in all of Fallout. We're not going this way. We are going to stick with Caesar, Legion's Emperor. It's a really cool card, and I do suggest you should probably build around it with D20 and all those kind of Dungeons and Dragons cards. It would make this really hum with Mr. House, but for purpose of this video, we are sticking with Caesar, Legion's Emperor.
Yeah, I can see that. Caesar just seems very aggressive. Mr. House is very cool, but I don't know. I'm curious to see the direction that you took this deck in. Without further ado, though, let's go ahead and dive into that. So what are some of the ads that you have?
Yeah, so for the ads, because I usually play Naya tokens, we're doing Mardu, so we get to play with black. It's very exciting. So this first card is a Planeswalker. It is Liliana, Dreadhorde General. It's 4 and 2 black for a starting loyalty of 6. And it's got a static ability that says whenever a creature you control dies, draw a card. As a +1 that says create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. A -4 that says each player sacrifices 2 creatures. And a -9 that says each opponent chooses a permanent they control of each permanent type and sacrifices the rest. Liliana in this deck is fantastic because our commander wants us to sacrifice another creature when we attack. That's going to trigger Liliana giving us a card draw. Plus, it just creates those tokens we can sack. It's really, really good in this deck.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I love playing the aristocrats and sacrifice style attacks, and the fact that I am not going to be building the upgrade for this one or playing around with this one makes me very, very sad. I love Liliana. She's just such a value piece.
Yeah, she's so good.
What kind of creatures do we have here? What can we expect?
Yes, for the next kind of creatures we got here, we're just trying to make some more tokens, and also you'll see this third one. It's very good for this deck too. So the first creature is Adeline, Resplendent Cathar. It's 1 and 2 white for a star 4 legendary creature human knight. It's got vigilance. It says its power is equal to the number of creatures you control. And whenever you attack for each opponent, create a 1/1 white human creature token that's tapped and attacking that player or planeswalker they control. So the fun thing about it, Adeline, is we can actually stack our triggers because they're both whenever you attack with Caesar. So we can make that 1/1 first and then sacrifice it immediately to Caesar. It's pretty good.
Yeah, lots of token generation here. I'm already starting to see that. Speaking about token generation, what about this next one?
Yeah, it's a Nimpicall. It's one of the new ones from Lost Caverns of Ixalan. A Nimpicall, 1000th Moon, is 1 red and a white for a 1/2 legendary creature human soldier. It says whenever you attack with one or more non-gnome creatures, put a +1/+1 counter on a Nimpical, then create X 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature tokens that are tapped and attacking, where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on a Nimpical. So it's the only card in the deck that's making gnomes. Otherwise, whenever we attack, we're making however many gnomes this has with counters on it. It gets pretty nuts pretty quickly. And of course, that card I did allude to, it's one of my favorites. I actually have a commander deck built around him. It's Ishin, 2 heavens is 1. It's a red, a white, and a black for a 3/4 legendary creature human samurai. It says if a creature attacking causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Our deck is filled with attack triggers, not only by our commander, but Ishin is a powerhouse in this deck.
So sack 2 things, get 4 things?
That's exactly right.
All right, I like that. That's a lot of value. It looks like we're not quite done with the creature package, though. What do we got next?
Yes, but it's the next kind of creature package. We want to drain our opponents. So these are pretty good cards to do that. First up, Illis Ilkor, Sadistic Pilgrim. It's a white and a black for a 2/2 legendary creature Phyrexian Core Cleric. It's got Death Touch and says whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. And whenever another creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life. A little bit of draining for our opponents, such as this other one, Perforos, God of the Forge. 3 and a red for a 6/5 legendary enchantment creature god. It's got Indestructible. Because as long as your devotion to red is less than 5, Perforos isn't a creature. And whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Perforos deals 2 damage to each opponent. Has another ability to pay 2 in red. Creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. David, you were very familiar with these 2 cards.
Yeah, actually, I have commander decks based around both of those. I do love this kind of style, as I've already mentioned. Perforos is one of those cards that you really need to be able to deal with immediately, and he's kind of tricky to deal with because he's not actually always a creature and an indestructible enchantment, while you have limited options there.
Yeah, we're going to be draining our opponents with the amount of token generation we have in this deck. It's going to be nuts. And the final creature we're throwing in here is Commissar Severina Rain. It's 1, a white, and a black for a 2/2 legendary creature human soldier. It has Leading from the Front, which means whenever Commissar Severina Rain attacks, each opponent loses X life, where X is the number of other attacking creatures. It also has Summary Execution, which is an ability where you can pay 2, sacrifice another creature, you gain 2 life, and draw a card. This card is fantastic for our Go Ride strategy. Not only are we going to be draining our opponents for however many creatures we're attacking with, we can sack the little things to gain 2 and draw a card. This is a great card.
I'm a little terrified of your creature package. Not gonna lie, this is gonna be a lot of damage.
Oh yeah, that's the name of the game. Damage our opponents.
Speaking about damaging your opponents, what about damaging their hearts? I see a sorcery here that is already making me kind of grunt and groan.
Yeah, so if you guys have been watching our Precon battles, the last couple of decks or battles, you want to say, they are really helmed with a lot of artifacts, a lot of enchantments, a lot of things that if we let get out of hand too quickly, it kind of does damage. So I wanted to throw in Farewell. Not only can you just throw in Farewell into any white deck, but since we are a Fallout deck, I suggest picking up this awesome art specifically for Fallout. It's 4 and 2 white for a sorcery. It says choose 1 or more. You can exile all artifacts, exile all creatures, exile all enchantments, or exile all graveyards, or just do all of them. Because you can be super mean against any recursion, any artifact themed deck, any enchantment themed deck, and if the board's getting too scary, time to say goodbye to everything, or farewell.
Yeah, I love this card a lot. Too bad I'm actually playing the Graveyard Recursion Artifact deck. I hate
Ooh,
this.
good luck.
You have a lot of my favorite cards included in this list. You have an instant here that is another one of my go-tos, at least staples whenever it comes to this color. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so because we are a token themed deck, I felt like not only is this a great card to include as a finisher and a token themed deck, but recently we had the creator of the commander format that we all love pass away. That is Sheldon Menery. He will have a secret layer themed after him. 50% of proceeds go to the American Cancer Society. So that's very cool that Wizards is doing this. Just as a nod to him, and also this is just a very good card. He helped design this card. So it is Ink Shield. It's 3, a white and a black for an instant that says prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to you this turn. For each 1 damage prevented this way, create a 2/1 white and black Inkling creature token with flying. So like I said, this is usually a finisher. You let your opponent swing completely at you. You say, no blocks. You play Ink Shield. You have now however many 2/1s back. When it's your turn, you swing, you win. So
Yeah, you don't have to have a whole lot of damage that you would have prevented to just kind of win the game on the back of this card.
yep. So like I said, a little bit of sentimental here because of Shelton. So thank you so much for everything you've contributed to the game. And then this is a great card.
All right, it looks like we have 2 enchantments. What are these?
Yes, so these enchantments are fantastic. I love this card ever since it was printed in New Capenna. It's rabble rousing. 4 and a white for an enchantment. It's got hideaway of 5. And then it says whenever you attack with 1 or more creatures, create that many 1/1 green and white citizen creature tokens. Then if you control 10 or more creatures, you may play the exile card without paying its mana cost. So it's just one of those abilities where it's like, I'm going to attack you with 5 creatures, and then I just automatically make 5 more creatures. So it doesn't really matter if you're swinging in your little 1/1s because you just get them back immediately. The other card that's an enchantment that I'm throwing in here, I felt was very on theme because we are playing with a war leader. So why not get a war leader's call? It's 1, a red and a white for an enchantment that just says creatures you control get +1/+1. It also says whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, war leader's call deals 1 damage to each opponent. So an anthem effect and also kind of an impact tremors effect.
Yeah, lots of value on both of these. War Leader's Call, kind of a fun new one that we're going to play around with. So very excited to see that. Kind of like a little bit of an anthem, almost kind of like a little bit of a Purphoros, just stapled onto 1 card. So all in all, so far, I've got to say I'm really not pleased. I'm gonna have to play against this.
Yeah, that's right. Play against it and lose a bunch of life.
I'm probably not just gonna lose a bunch of life. I'm genuinely terrified as to whether or not I'm gonna be able to contend with this deck. All right, though, let's go ahead and move on. Let's talk a little bit about the mana base. It looks like you touched it up a little bit.
Yeah, so if you guys have been watching enough of these Precon upgrades that I do, you'll know these are always the first lands I add. I'm adding all the bond lands in my colors. That's Luxury Suite, Spectator Seating, and Vault of Champions. They enter the battlefield tapped unless you have 2 or more opponents. And guess what? We are playing Commander unless 2 or more opponents are already dead. In which case, this will come in tapped. David, you learned the hard way.
I did, actually. That was a fun little nod to a recent gameplay that we did together. If you haven't checked that out, take a look back at the Murders of Karlov Manor one. If you haven't checked that one out already, I did definitely misplay. I top decked that land, played that land, and totally forgot you need 2 or more opponents. It doesn't actually always enter the battlefield untapped.
But most of the time, it will. Luxury Suite taps for a black or red, Spectator Seating for a red or white, and Vault of Champions for a white or black. One day, Wizards is going to just start printing these on all the precons, but today is not that day, so they're going in the deck. The final land that we're throwing into this deck is one of my favorites that have been printed since the Lord of the Rings set. It is Minas Tirith. It's a legendary land that enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a legendary creature. You can tap it, add a white, and it has another ability. You could pay 1 and white, draw a card, activate only if you attack with 2 or more creatures this turn. Like I said before, we are a go wide deck, so we are probably swinging with 2 or more creatures pretty regularly, so we can just go ahead and draw a card pretty frequently.
Absolutely love this. I'm a huge fan of the upgrades here. I can definitely see what you were going with. Honestly, it looks very, very straightforward. Now, sadly, one of the downsides of us doing this is that you do have to remove some of the cards, and I feel like that does like hurt even more with these Universes Beyond products, because you definitely don't want to remove any of the super like flavor wins that people are gonna love. But what didn't make this upgrade?
Yeah, so starting off, you mentioned it, flavor wins. I am getting rid of Mr. House, President and CEO. We've already talked about it. It is a dice rolling commander. We have 2 ways to roll dice in this deck, Mr. House being one of them. We have one of the luck bobbleheads that's in this deck. I am keeping that one in. But Mr. House just really doesn't do enough value. It's 3 mana, and then you have to invest 4 mana every time you want to roll a dice. It's just not going to do it for this deck.
All right, sad to see him go. What else is going to be eating the axe?
Yeah, so White Glove Gourmand is 2, a white and a black for a 2/2 creature human noble. It says when it enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens. It says at the beginning of your end step, if another human died under your control this turn, create a food token. We don't really care about food too much in this deck. let me rephrase. We don't care about food at all in this deck. I mean, yeah, cool, we can gain some life. But at the end of the day, 4 mana to make the extra 2 1/1s, we have plenty of ways to go ahead and make tokens in this deck.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. There's been a lot of like weird food inclusions just in general. I think that Wizards is really trying to push the mechanic. I don't think that out of the different token types, it's quite as impactful as like a clue or a treasure.
Yep, exactly. Craig Boone Novak Guard is 1, a red, and a white for a 3/3 legendary creature human soldier. It's got reach and lifelink, and it says 1 for my baby, which means whenever you attack with 2 or more creatures, put 2 quest counters on Craig Boone Novak Guard. When you do, Craig Boone deals damage equal to the number of quest counters on it to up to 1 target creature, unless that creature's controller has Craig Boone deal that much damage to them. Most of the time, people are probably just going to take the damage until it gets too many quest counters, in which case your opponent's probably just going to say, yeah, go ahead and kill my creature, that's fine. So I just felt like Greg Boone, giving the opponent the flexibility to choose where that damage goes, it's not worth it in my opinion.
Yeah, anytime that you give your opponent a choice, they're always just going to choose the one that serves them best for that scenario. So I completely understand why this card was removed.
Yeah, and I get it too, because this card does have lifelink, so you are going to be getting that lifelink damage through, gain you some life. But in the end, like I said, it's just not for me.
We have a couple of other creatures here as well, also going to be removed. What do we have up next?
Yeah, so the last 3 creatures I'm getting rid of. This first one, Impassioned Orator. It's 1 and a white for a 2/2 creature human cleric. It says whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. That's it. We added Illus Ilcor, just kind of better. It also drains your opponent too when things happen. So I didn't need too many of these effects.
Yeah, kind of an awkward soul sister here.
Mm-hmm. Kellogg, Dangerous Mind is 1 a black and a red for a 3/2 legendary creature human mercenary. It's got first strike and haste and says whenever it attacks, you create a treasure token. Has another ability where you can sacrifice 5 treasures and gain control of target creature for as long as you control. Kellogg, activate only as a sorcery. Yeah, so Kellogg, I understand what he's trying to do. He's trying to gain control of your opponent's stuff, and then if we had our commander out, he can sacrifice your opponent's stuff, which is pretty cool. But I do want to use those treasures as mana. So do I want to sacrifice them as that? I don't think I do. So this last creature we're removing is Legate Lanius, Caesar's Ace. It's 2 a black and a red for a 2/2 legendary creature human soldier. It's got Decimate, which means whenever Legate Lanius enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a 10th of the creature they control, rounded up. And whenever an opponent sacrifices a creature, put a +1/+1 counter on Legate Lanius. It's cool. I get it. It's like Caesar's right-hand guy, and it would make sense to keep it in this deck. But a lot of the times, a 10th of creatures people control, maybe at the time you want to play this is 1 creature, in which case he's getting 3 counters, and that's it. He's just going to be a bigger body. He'll grow by himself, but I just felt like he's a little too selfish, and we want more of the cards that kind of create tokens and drain our opponent.
Yeah, that is a bit of a bummer. I do have to admit, I think this is my favorite artwork from this set. All right, looks like we have both an instant and a sorcery that could be removed here. What are these?
Yeah, so this first one is a sorcery. It's the Nipton Lottery. It's 2 a black and a red for a sorcery. It says choose a creature at random. You gain control of that creature till end of turn. Untap it. It gains haste until end of turn. Then destroy all other creatures. The problem with this card is it's random, meaning we can actually take one of our opponent's things, and then if the other opponents or that opponent is still up on block, you could just block it so it doesn't actually get through the damage, and then it destroys everything, and we pass our turn. They get their creature back, and we're left with nothing. So we have plenty of other board wipes in this deck as well. I think this was like 1 of 4 board wipes in this deck. It's pretty nuts that there's so many board wipes, but this was the odd man out since we're adding Farewell now.
I mean, I understand the downside that you're talking about, but if you cast this and you're the only one with creatures in play, you're guaranteed to get your creature back.
And destroy the rest of your creatures. Yeah, absolutely. I like the way you think.
Thank you.
And you mentioned it. This is an instant. It's Entrapment Maneuver. It's 3 and a white. Target player sacrifices an attacking creature. You create X 1/1 white soldier creature tokens, where X is that creature's toughness. This is 4 mana. Similar to the Craig Boone creature that we got rid of, this is giving our opponent an option So if they're swinging with 2 creatures, which they probably will, based on this is 4 mana, and by the time we want to play this, it's going to be later in the game. They're probably sacrificing the lowest of it, and we're not going to be getting the most value there. So not a fan of this card. We didn't necessarily need it. We've got enough token production, and I don't need a 4 mana sacrifice something.
Yeah, I can totally see this removal. The Inkling Shield, by the way, I think that just does this kind of same thing, but so much better. Instead of having to keep up mana and to potentially like deflect one of your opponent's combats, instead you're just like probably going to win the game on the back of the other card. So I see the removal for this.
Exactly that.
All right. Well, in this post-apocalyptic Precon, looks like we're coming in with a little bit less of some tools to help us get by. What is this artifact?
Yeah, so this is Survivor's Medkit. It's 1 generic mana for an artifact. It has an ability you could pay 1, tap it, choose one that hasn't been chosen. You can Stim Pack, which is draw a card. You can Fancy Lad's Snack Cakes, which is create a food token. Or you could Rat Away, which is target player loses all rad counters, sacrifice Survivor's Medkit. I looked at this card and I thought, that's okay. I don't really care about the food, like I mentioned before, like at all. And I'm looking at this upgrade as from a standpoint of we're not just playing all the Fallout decks. So that last ability, target player loses all rad. This deck does not make rad. So that's useless unless you were just in that instant case where you're sitting down with your friends at a pod. You just opened up your precons together from the Fallout deck. Then yes, obviously this is going to be a card that's kind of good for you because you don't want rad counters. But for 1 mana to draw a card, I don't know. Just wasn't doing enough.
This is bad. It's just bad. I don't really have anything else to say about this card. I apologize. All right, hopefully some more good cuts, or at least not good cuts, but some more interesting cards that did get cut. What are the enchantments?
Yeah, so this first enchantment is called Stolen Strategy. It's 4 and a red for an enchantment. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of each opponent's library. Until end of turn, you may cast spells from among those exiled cards. And you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells. This is one of those cards that are good in a strategy that is not this one that we're running. We don't really care about playing our opponent's things. There is a chance that we just don't ever want to play our opponent's things. So for 5 mana, I'd rather play a different enchantment. This Stolen Strategy ain't the strategy for me.
All right, and what about this other one?
This other one I liked a lot, but in the end, I'll tell you why I cut it. It's Vault 11, Voter's Dilemma. It's 2 a white and a black for an enchantment saga. First lore counter says, for each opponent, you create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. And the second and third, which are the final lore counters, says each player secretly votes for up to 1 creature. Then those votes are revealed. No creature got votes. Each player draws a card. Otherwise, destroy each creature with the most votes or tied for the most votes.
Complicated randomness.
This is kind of a card that's like, okay, guys, let's talk amongst the table. Even though it's secret, it never is secret. It's like, come on, you got to vote for this creature because we all got to kill it together. But the reason I'm cutting it is because if you're kind of in the lead, you're getting voted out. So your creatures are dying based on just your opponents. Once again, this is a card that allows too much options to give to your opponents.
Yeah, this is kind of interesting. There's a lot of cards here that seem to have like the sub theme of your opponent's choose.
Yep, Voter's Dilemma.
All right, and from here on out, it looks like we just touched up the mana base a little bit. Looks like you removed 4 lands. What are those 4 lands?
It's the same 4 lands that are always removed out of any 3-color deck because they just keep printing the same lands over and 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 over. Yeah, the first one, Ash Barrens. It's a land that taps for colorless and it's got basic land cycling 1. That's it.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I dropped this card immediately and about 90% of the decks.
Yep. And all 3 of the temples. That's Temple of Malice, Temple of Silence, Temple of Triumph. Enters the battlefield tapped always. When it does enter, it does scry 1, which I don't really care for. And that's it. You can tap them for the respective color. So Malice is black and red, Silence is white and black, and Triumph is red and white. They're just slow. We're putting in the bond lands. They're better. And Ash Barrens is significantly not good. like Minas Tirith is.
It is significantly not good.
It is not.
All right, well, all in all, it looks like that's going to do it for our $100 upgrade. Before we do move on, though, how much money did you actually spend out of that $100 budget?
Yeah, so after adding all of those additions, my total amount for those cards is $101.35.
All right, so pretty close. We'll give you the benefit of the doubt on that one. Looking at this deck as a whole, though, from your time goofing around with this, play testing it, all that other kind of fun stuff, what are your thoughts on this deck?
My thoughts are that this deck is extremely strong right out of the box, and I highly recommend this. For formatting, getting a 4/4 and kind of doing the aristocrats theme that you absolutely love, David. The fact that our commander gets to choose 2 of the modes is incredible just by sacking 1 token. It gets out of hand so quickly. I'm so excited to play you guys in our $100 Precon battle, and boy, oh boy, do I have some cool cards in store for the 300.
All right, well, you heard it here. Make sure that you stick around. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, make sure you subscribe, follow us. That way you can see that $300 upgrade as well as all the other content that we push out. We're going to be doing the $100 and $300 upgrades for all of these Fallout decks. One more thing before we do wrap this up, you can go ahead and scroll down, find in the description below. There is a Moxfield link for this deck. That's also where you can find the Moxfield link for, of course, all the other goodies that we put out and any of the other previous pre-construct decks. If you'd like to, you can also find us on Instagram, TikTok, and on Twitter. We are at Guys at Magic. And currently going across the screen right now, those are going to be our patrons. If you want to show a little bit of extra love, you can go ahead and find the link for our Patreon down below. There's a couple extra content videos that we have posted there. So just the next little way, I guess, you can kind of give back and once again, share that love. Until next time, though, this has been Guys at Magic. Hunter.
Peace.
All right, take it easy.